You are not a hero. You never wanted to be one. But right now, you are sitting at a table with men who have ordered the deaths of hundreds of people, and every single one of them thinks you are their brother. Your real name hasn't been spoken in 14 months. You don't remember what your own voice sounds like when it's telling the truth. This is not a story about good versus evil. It is a story about what happens when the line between the two completely disappears, and the only person who can't find it anymore is you. You grew up on the border, not symbolically, literally. You were raised in a town split by a river, English on one side, Spanish on the other, and everyone pretending the line meant something. You moved between both worlds before you could legally drive. You wore two faces before anyone ever asked you to. Your father worked customs. Your uncle ran a restaurant that everyone in the neighborhood knew laundered money for people whose names you were never supposed to say out loud. You saw the system from both ends before you were 18. You joined the army not out of patriotism, but because you needed to leave. You were good at languages, even better at reading rooms. You had this ability, rare and almost impossible to teach, to become whoever the person in front of you needed you to be. Not lying exactly, more like reflection. You gave people back the version of themselves they most wanted to see. The army noticed. Then military intelligence noticed. Then someone in a building with no signage in Langley noticed. By 29, you had 2 graduate degrees, fluency in 3 languages, and a classified file that most people with the highest security clearances would never be allowed to read. You were exactly the kind of person the agency spent decades looking for: invisible, adaptable, unattached. The first meeting happens in a coffee shop. No suits, no badges, just a woman named Sandra who looks like she manages a regional accounting firm. She orders decaf. She knows things about you that make your stomach tighten. Not secrets exactly, more like observations. She describes you to yourself more accurately than you ever could. She doesn't offer you money first. She offers you purpose. She tells you that a cartel operating out of 3 countries has embedded itself into legitimate banking, municipal government, and federal law enforcement. She tells you that the conventional approach, informants, wiretaps, raids, has failed 17 times in 11 years. She tells you that the only way in is a person, one person, deep, long term, without a net. She slides a folder across the table. You open it, you close it. You say yes before she finishes explaining what yes means. The training takes 8 months. Most of it isn't tactical, it's psychological. You don't learn how to fight better. You learn how to grieve a fake childhood. You construct an entire human being from nothing. A man named Marco Reyes, born in Culiacan, raised in Guadalajara, a mid-level importer with the right connections and the right kind of hunger. You learn Marco's dead mother's name, her favorite song. The smell of the apartment he grew up in, described to you in such precise detail that you start to dream about it. You practice being Marco until you stop practicing, until Marco simply is. The handler tells you on the final day of training, the greatest danger is not being caught. The greatest danger is forgetting which one of you is real. You laugh. You shouldn't have laughed. You enter through commerce. That's always how it starts. Not with guns or violence, but with money. Marco Reyes is a businessman. He moves pharmaceutical precursors across borders. He knows how to make bribes look like consulting fees. He is meticulous, low-key, and reliably profitable. You make contact through a supply chain attorney in Monterrey who doesn't know you're watching him as closely as you're watching his clients. The first meeting with anyone connected to the organization is a lunch. Just lunch. You eat carne asada and talk about logistics for 40 minutes. Nothing significant is said, but you are being read. Every pause, every inflection, every moment where you could have shown nervousness and didn't, It's all being stored. 2 weeks later, you get a second meeting, then a third. Then you are introduced to a man named Tomas. Tomas is not the top of the organization, but he is a door, and he is now, for reasons that will complicate everything that comes after, beginning to trust you. Trust inside a criminal organization is not given, it is tested. They ask you to do things, small things at first, that exist specifically to check whether you'll report them. You navigate each test the way a surgeon navigates tissue, cutting only what must be cut, preserving everything else. 6 months in, you are no longer Marco the contact. You are Marco the reliable. You are invited to dinners, to private conversations, to the kinds of meetings where decisions are made rather than announced. You report everything: coordinates, names, financial structures, shipping routes. You transmit in code, in fragments, in patterns only Sandra and two other people can read. And still. You are also having dinner with Tomas's family on a Sunday afternoon in October, watching his daughter draw horses in a notebook while his wife argues with him about whether to repaint the kitchen yellow or white, and the line for the first time blurs. Tomas is not what the file said. The file said, enforcer, mid-level, suspected in 4 deaths, no family attachments. The file was written by someone who had never sat across from him. Tomas came up from nothing so violent and complete that your own childhood, which you never thought of as easy, suddenly feels like softness. He talks about it rarely and only sideways. A comment here, a silence there, the way he watches his daughter with a specific kind of attention that is really just vigilance disguised as love. He is not a good man. You are not confused about that. But he is a full one. There's a mechanic named Ruben who laughs too loudly and cries at football matches. There's an accountant named Delia who is supporting her mother through cancer treatment and jokes that the cartel has better health benefits than the government. You are building a case that will destroy all of them. And somewhere in your chest, in the part of you that is still you and not Marco, something begins to fracture. You sit in the bathroom of a safe house at 2 a.m. and you try to remember why you're here. You say it out loud, quietly, into the mirror. The mission, the objective, the thousands of lives destroyed by the product moving through these networks, the corrupted institutions, the dead journalists, the disappeared, you know all of it. You believe all of it. But Tomas's daughter's name is Valentina, and she is 7 years old, and she will grow up with her father in prison, and she will not understand why, and she will spend her entire adolescence trying to answer a question that has no answer. You file your report at 3 a.m. You include everything, but your hands don't feel like your hands anymore. Sandra calls the next morning. She asks if you're holding together. You say yes. She pauses just long enough for you to understand. She doesn't entirely believe you. She tells you the operation is in the final planning phase. She says, the last thing we need from you is confirmation of the shipment date. You say, give me 2 weeks. She says, you have 1. The week before the operation, someone talks. Not about you specifically, but about a leak. There is a conversation in a room you were not meant to overhear between Tomas and a man you've never seen. And the words they use are careful and cold, and they are describing the profile of a person exactly like Marco. You do not react. You file the information away and walk into the kitchen and pour yourself a coffee like a man who has nothing to hide, because Marco has nothing to hide, and you are Marco right now, completely without seam or gap. But inside, the clock is deafening. You have 48 hours before they narrow it down further, before someone remembers that Marco appeared at exactly the right moment, before they start pulling at the thread. You contact Sandra through a dead drop you haven't used in 4 months. You tell her, move the operation forward. She tells you that means some of the outer network won't be included. Some people will slip through. You tell her, I understand. You tell her, do it. You are not there when it happens. That's standard. You are extracted 42 hours before the arrests begin, pulled out through a sequence of vehicle changes and border crossings that feel less like escape and more like shedding skin. You watch what you can piece together from reports, coordinated raids across 3 countries, 19 arrests, seizures totaling hundreds of millions, 2 government officials taken into custody, the financial network, which took a decade to build, partially dismantled in 72 hours. The operation is called a success. You read the word success in a debriefing document, and something in you goes very, very quiet. Thomas is arrested at his home. His daughter is present. You read this in a footnote. It is a footnote. They give you 3 weeks in a facility that looks like a resort and functions like a decompression chamber. Therapists, structure, carefully managed reentry into your own identity. They tell you that what you're feeling is normal. They tell you that compartmentalization takes time to unwind. They tell you the work you did saved lives, and they are probably right statistically in the way that math can be right and still feel like nothing. You spend a lot of time trying to remember your own name, not forgetting it, trying to feel it again, trying to wear it the way you used to, naturally, without effort. You look in the mirror and you practice. Hi, my name is, and you stop. Because the face that looks back at you has spent 14 months being someone else. And you realize with a clarity that is almost peaceful that you cannot fully return to the person who agreed to this. That person made a decision without understanding what it would cost, and the cost wasn't danger. It wasn't exposure. It wasn't the 48 hours when you thought you were going to die. The cost was this: you saw the enemy as human, and now you cannot unsee it. That's not weakness. Sandra would call it contamination. The therapists call it a stress response, but you know it's something else. You know it's just the truth. They will ask you, eventually, if you do it again. And you will think about Valentina drawing horses in a notebook. You will think about Tomas watching her with the eyes of a man who built a wall around the one thing he was trying to protect and couldn't protect it from himself. You will think about the version of you that walked into that first meeting and felt something close to certainty. You will think about all the lives the operation saved, the ones you'll never meet, the ones who will never know your name, the ones who are alive right now, tonight, without any knowledge of the cost. And you will think about what you are now. Not broken exactly, not lost, but changed in the specific way that only happens when you hold 2 incompatible truths in your hands for long enough that they both leave marks. The agency gave you a new name after the operation, a clean identity, a reset. But here is what they cannot reset. The most dangerous thing about spending years pretending to be someone else is the moment you realize you weren't pretending at all. You were just meeting parts of yourself you were never allowed to acknowledge before. You served your country. You protected strangers. You dismantled something that needed to be dismantled. And somewhere in a house that's quieter now, a 7-year-old girl is asking a question about her father that no one has the courage to answer honestly. You did the right thing. You're still not sure what that means.